there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with, you guessed it, another rant video. So I had a great weekend at state swimming. Huge congratulations to all my swimmers. I think we performed phenomenally well. And I was very happy to go out with a bang. I think I'm done with my coaching career and done with swimming, at least for the foreseeable future, as now I want to go focus back on my main hobby, which is Magic the Gathering, which sometimes I struggle with why I'm still in this game. Well, I haven't jumped ship like Brian Kibler or Stanislav Sivka into something else that seems to do a better job cultivating a community and just cultivating a great game, and actually has some vision. This is a Mark Rosewater blogatog. This is his blog, his Tumblr blog, where people can ask him questions and he answers them. Now, once I really want to nail this point in, I get accused of this a lot, of saying that, like, really saying that WotC equals Marrow and Marrow equals WotC. Yes, he's an employee, but he doesn't 100% speak for the entire company. I know that I've spoken to some people in the WotC kind of clique, and they say there is a ton of infighting at WotC on the vision and how to go about the future of Magic the Gathering, and Mark Rosewater is definitely in one of the more controversial spotlights within those groups. Like, a lot of people either love him or hate him, even within the WotC hierarchy. So anyway, this is a response to Modern. I think everyone at this point knows how I feel about Modern. I would say that I don't necessarily even hate the format. I think people are just misunderstanding where I come from when I rage quit, which I basically did rage quit the format in protest, just because it just lacked vision. I didn't think that Wizards was really doing what they needed to do to cultivate a healthy environment. The bannings, you can go check out my video of the top 5 ways to save Modern, and I go point by point what I think is wrong with the format and what needs to change. Well, this is one of the points. This one hits huge on one of the points with why I think that Wizards just doesn't get Modern, how they don't get that it is very, very healthy for their bankroll, for their stockholders, for their end of level, how much money goes into the system, how many people stake with the game. They just really do not get it. And I'm hopefully going to fill in some of the blanks as a player, as a, well, just as a kind of casual player, a very competitive player, a store owner, and a community organizer, like a community. I would say, 27,000 YouTube followers is pretty significant within the community. So I hear people's woes. I'm actively speaking with other people. And I was a huge Modern fan. I don't know if there was a bigger fan of Modern at one point. Modern got me to my first Pro Tour. Modern was like the first constructed format that I went all in on, because I've never really been a fan of constructed, never really been a fan of standard. It's just always just been a little bit lacking to me. I've always preferred draft, and always preferred, I've loved cube and draft. Those have always been my kind of love of the game. And I got back into standard just because it was kind of forced. My hand was forced. There wasn't nearly as many draft tournaments as there were constructed standard tournaments. And then when Modern came out, it was just the perfect format for me, because it was something that I could spend a lot of time in, and it didn't rotate, and I could come up with brews that would last. And whenever a new set came out, I'd be excited about new cards coming out that would actually affect different archetypes and whatnot. And I think that they are just completely misunderstood, or just cannot, they have no vision to see why that Modern is so good for the game. So with that said, I am going to read what Mark Rosewater responds to this gentleman that asks him. I'm assuming that he says, no, a lot of people play Modern. We have no plans of eliminating the format. So I'm sure that someone asked the question, is Wizards trying to eliminate Modern? And so he starts off with that question, or with the response from Wizards, and then he says, then why are we seeing Wizards moving away from the format in regards to major events? Without this exposure, competitive formats grow stale, and shops lose interest. Extended followed a similar path. That is why people are worried. Huge legitimate statement there by this not really good at coming up with name. Here is the response that just really just made me shake my head. I showed this to some of the Modern players in my store, and they just completely gasped because of how disconnected Marrow is with the community. He says, we have zero, this is Marrow talking here, we have zero high-level commander events, and the format is thriving. The two aren't necessarily linked. I've seen the numbers. Modern is doing just fine. Did he seriously just try to compare Commander to Modern, Commander was actually a response to the hyper competitiveness of Magic. There was no casual format, and casual players came up with a format that was strictly supposed to be not competitive. Most Commander, I've actually bowed out of a lot of the Commander tournaments at my local game store because I'm too competitive and they don't like playing with a competitive player. And so I've given them their kind of their space. Most of my Commander players at my store are exclusively Commander players. We have to beg them to play in a constructed event. When we need like another person to even it out so that someone doesn't get a buy in constructed, we basically a lot of times have to bribe them to actually even play, give them free entry or let them use a deck or something like that because of how much they do not care about the competitive scene. Commander players don't need a high-level Commander event. In fact, I'm sure that they wouldn't even play in a high-level Commander event because that is not their cup of tea. They want to sit down and enjoy more of a board game type style game where they can just chat with their friends and I mean, this of course doesn't represent all Commander players, but the vast majority of my Commander players at my store or all the other Commander players I've interacted with at other stores, they're more of the board game player. They're more of the, hey, I want to get down and just have a fun game and do wacky stuff. And so they have zero interest in a high-level Commander event. I think that if Wizards did some sort of stupid Commander, high-level Commander Pro Tour or coverage or something like that, a lot of Commander players would actually become a little bit disenfranchised and be like, well, you're going to ruin my format. So it's actually a good thing that Wizards has stayed out of Commander as far as making it a competitive format. It is thriving for the exact opposite reason. Modern, you can't just say that's going to be the same thing. In fact, Modern is going to go the way of Extended if there is no reason to play it. People need something to shoot for. Even though the vast majority of players will never make it to a Pro Tour and will never compete in a high-level event, still even the vast majority of competitive players need something to shoot for. It would be like in swimming if there was no Olympics or if there was no state championship. Even though in state championship in Utah, only a fraction of the people make it, but that's what all of them are shooting for, is to get onto state and nationals and All-American and things like that. If those very, very competitive things were taken away, there'd be no reason to really strive for it. And I think that Modern is the exact same. Once we get rid of the Pro Tour Moderns and the World Moderns and the Team Unified Modern, once we quit seeing coverage, just like this gentleman says, or gentlewoman, whoever put this, that shops and people will start to lose interest. It will just become like, okay, well, it's something I can sort of play. I mean, yes, locally, and I've heard a lot of comments if you go over to the subreddit, the Magic subreddit, people are saying, well, Legacy's been just fine, and we only get a few events. Legacy is a very small niche, a very small clique. And I absolutely do not want to compare Legacy to Modern. I have never touched Legacy. I don't think I will touch Legacy. It's just kind of out of my price range. It's out of where the power level is way too high for where I like playing Magic in. And I don't want to see Modern to be Legacy light, or at least even if it does kind of the power creep keeps creeping up, I don't want to see it go the way of Legacy where they don't do coverage, they don't do a lot of events just because of how hard it is for the average Joe to attain a Legacy deck. Modern should not be that way. Modern should be a nice format that is something that people can transition into after Standard. So let me go back to this. I've talked about this a lot in my other videos, so go back and check that out, about where Wizards doesn't get the pivotal role that Modern plays. So as a store owner, I've noticed a very, very, very similar trend with new players. New players get in, they play Standard, they build a deck, a lot of times they're half-assed on building their first Standard deck. They'll be like, I don't want to spend $300. So they'll build this tier 1 or tier 2, tier 3 type deck that's budget, that isn't very complex to play, usually an aggro, or like green-red energy is a perfect example. I've sold so many green-red energies to these players that just want to come in because their friends got them into Magic and they just want a decently competitive deck. I see like vampires and werewolves, sell those all the time. Those like or mono red is always that like introductory deck that we get new players in. And they go an entire standard season, and they're usually not very successful because they're new players. But they can write it off as I'm a new player. I'm not really into it. But as most people do with Magic, they get hooked and they want to get better. So next standard, they're going to go all in. So rotations comes, they don't really worry too much that their deck rotated. They pick up the new pieces from the new rotation, but this time it's going to be different. This time they're going to go all in, and they buy that tier 1 deck. They really start reading the articles. They really think that they're going to win their FNMs. They're going to go into tournaments. This time around they're going to be all in. And which is great. They get into standard, and before they know it, it's rotation time. And they've just lost all of their value. And not only just all their value, like a lot of people focus on the cost of Magic, the cost of Magic, the cost of Magic. I keep having this fight with so many people that the cost of Magic actually isn't that high. Coming from a competitive hockey player, my God, ice time and gear, even like the expendable gear, like the disposable gear that you have to buy in hockey, like you break sticks, or at least the heads on the sticks, all the time. The tape, that stuff adds up. You have to get your skates sharpened. Ice time is so expensive. When I played like a league of hockey, just like a season of hockey, it was easily into the hundreds of dollars just for the fees, just for the stuff that doesn't stick around. And I'm talking about the introductory fee to buying the gear. In hockey, you have to buy a helmet. What did our league require? Gloves, helmet, shin pads, shoulder pads, cup, all those things, a stick, skates, all those things you had to have before you can join the league. And then if you actually wanted some decent gear, you're into $500, $600. The same thing can be said about football. I'd even say about swimming. To enter swimming, we have the pool time fee, which is usually it's usually, depending on how long the season is, it can be anywhere from like $75 to in the hundreds of dollars per kid, just for their participation. Then you have all the travel expenses. You have to buy a cap, multiple caps, so usually a practice cap and a racing cap, a practice goggles and a racing goggles. Then you have to buy fins and like hand paddles for practice that just help you with your technique and your stroke. It depends on how serious you want to get into, but the racing suits are usually around $60. Practice suits are usually around $30 to $40. So right there's $100 just in suits. Suits only last about a season, so that's right on with rotation. With swimming, you're into swimming, which is a very inexpensive sport. You're into $200 to $300, I would say. Hockey, football, all those type of sports, you're into a lot more. So the price point a lot of times is to me is just kind of a moot argument, just because like any hobby is going to cost you money. What I really think that gets people really frustrated with rotation is the time and energy they've spent in their deck, and they've fallen in love with their deck, and they've just barely become good with their deck, and it rotates. This is the time that as a salesman, as a shop owner, I introduce people to Modern. You want to avoid this in the future? We have this great format. It's called Modern. Modern doesn't rotate. The only thing that shakes up Modern is if a deck becomes too out of hand, they will ban a piece, which I will argue with people until I'm blue in the face that is healthy for the game, not unhealthy for the game. All the people that are still to this day saying there should be no ban list are just crazy. It's a way to keep the... Dota 2 has to... League of Legends, Dota 2, StarCraft, all those games that I've played in the past, they have to shake things up by nerfing particular characters. The only way that Magic can do that, the only way that Magic can regulate their game is to do ban lists. So I'm perfectly fine with that. Does it suck when your particular deck gets banned? Absolutely it does. I'm sure it does. But that's just the nature of the beast. It has to for a healthy environment. So it's my time after rotation. I'm saying, well, here's a format you don't have to worry about rotating, that you can just work on it as you go. And it seems to be after the second rotation. It always seems to be after second rotation where I get people either they transition over to Commander and just decide they're going to be casual players, or they transition over to an internal format like Modern. And this keeps people in the game. If Wizards wants to see a huge drop in the player base, get rid of Modern. Keep going down the road that they're going down. Keep having this attitude that Mark Rosewater has about how it's going to be just fine without us giving something for them to shoot for. People have spoken. People in the community have wanted a high-level event. I understand where he goes on here that says the high pro events are considered marketing. They're literally paid for with marketing dollars. So one of the responsibilities of the Pro Tour is to get players excited for the recent set. It's a lot harder to do that playing a format where only a handful of cards might show up. I understand that, Wizards. We get it. We get that your Pro Tour needs to be a promotional tour. It needs to showcase the new cards so that you can sell your new set and keep your stockholders happy. But your stockholders are not going to be happy if you miss a huge portion of their potential profits in a format that is highly successful. How are you going to sell more modern cards if you're not promoting it? Modern still, the secondary market is necessary. It's necessary for people buying standards packs in the future. So I would say that Fatal Push is probably the biggest success out of A3 Volt, and has nothing to do. I mean, it's okay, it's good, it's great in Standard, but it's much better in Modern or in Frontier than it is in Standard. There's the SRAM. SRAM was very awesome for Modern. It had a huge new archetype, and a lot of people got excited about playing that new archetype with the Pure Steel Paladin. Marrow just doesn't get the role that Modern plays, and the end game of at least the profits and the shareholders that Modern actually provides them with. It is incredibly healthy, and people want something to shoot for. That is why I've over and over and over said that we need to have independent tournament, like end of season or once a year, modern tournament, a modern championship where people qualify it independently of like pro points. I'd actually be okay with inviting silver, gold, platinum players to the modern end of level modern, but the rest of the people don't qualify from pro tours or Grand Prix. They specifically qualify from modern qualifiers that can be held at Grand Prix, that can be held at local game stores, that can be held. It will give people a reason to try to shoot for this end of level modern event. And it is so, like, even though my personal feelings aside, people love the format. Give them a reason to play it. So they shouldn't be trying for less ways. It's almost like they're like, we're competing with ourselves. If we do modern events, then it's cramping the creative space or just the ability for us to showcase standard. That is completely ludicrous. You're the same game. Any promotion of the game is not competing with yourself, Wizards. Commander 2, back to Commander thriving in modern. Commander gets spotlighted like crazy. You keep printing a Commander set every year that gives them their like huge reason to play Commander and invest in Commander, which is highly successful for that very reason. Just printing a Modern Masters 2017 with no real hype, with no real, still to this day baffles me that the two most successful Grand Prix of all time were Modern Masters 1 and Modern Masters 2. And so what do they decide to do with Modern Masters 3? Let's just release it to the public, whatever. We're not going to do anything with it. We're not going to announce any sort of event that coincides with it. Yep, have fun with it. Here's another cash grab. We're just not really. Are they just lazy at Wizards? Are they just. I really want to know, like, what's the proper terminology for how Wizards just. Are they lazy? Are they out of touch? Are they just that stupid to realize, what works and what doesn't work? And again, they'll be like, well, it's just Rogue Deckler. He doesn't know. He just doesn't know. I've been in this game for as long as anyone has. I have successfully cultivated a community of like-minded people. I have successfully run a store and competed at both competitive, the highest competitive level, and as like kind of a casual player before. I know the ins and outs of the game. I know the ins and outs of the community. And yes, my opinions on things doesn't represent the entire community, but it does represent a huge, large portion of the community. And it is just sad that I see this huge out of touch from especially Mark Rosewater. I've said for a long time that maybe it's time for him to step down. I appreciate what Mark Rosewater has done in the past. Like he came up with the Timmy, Johnny, Spike. He implemented like kind of personality theory into the game, and which was wildly successful. He started to represent the Johnnies and the Timmys rather than just catering to Spike. But if this is the attitude he's going to have, if these are just the blanket statements, that this is just the vision, it might be time for some new blood at Wizards. Might be time for a new. I think whether or not Mark Rosewater likes it, he's become kind of the community spokesperson. He's kind of the face of Wizards, and I don't know. Maybe Wizards needs to step in and say, you know what, this doesn't represent the entire brand, and give us some assuredness that they're going to do something about these eternal formats, these moderns and frontiers, and give us what we want. Other than that, it's just gonna have to go back to Star City Games and TCG Player and other people to pick up the slack. Harayuya is wildly successful with their frontier format. Star City Games is wildly successful with their modern events. Wizards, not so much. Not so much. It's sad when they have to have other, even their Grand Prix are run by other companies because they do such a terrible job of running their own company that it has to be outsourced. So I guess if they can't do it, outsource it to other places. Help them pump it up. We've talked about even coverage is so much better from Star City Games than it is from Wizards. If you're inept of running it, find someone who it is. Listen to us, speak to us, give us what we want. Take our money, Wizards. Take our money. Lastly, I just want to finish up with kind of like I just can't stand kind of the people like, yay for Marrow coming out. See, Modern isn't dead. Yay, the sky isn't falling. And everyone just jumping on this bandwagon how Legacy isn't dying. Legacy is thriving. Legacy is only thriving because there was a huge influx of player base, and they did get their small portion of players that transitioned over to Legacy. If you go from 2 million to 25 million, of course the format's going to grow. But I would say that Legacy hasn't grown as much as you'd expected. A lot of the actual value of Legacy has stayed pretty stagnant. From, if you compare it to Commander, it's been completely outclassed. So I think that's a pretty moot argument about Legacy being healthy or thriving. It's a very niche, very click type format. You cannot compare it to the wildly popularity of Modern. So I love this this comment here. It says, at the same time, there's a lot of risky all the eggs in one basket thinking going on at WotC. This is about Standard. This is why a dud of a Standard format, or even worse, several duds in a format, that basically from Origins forward, is such a nightmare for them, and probably why they banhammered 3 cards of the last format. When Standard sputters out, they have nothing else to turn to, and currently that is by design. Investing in having some kind of alternative format that they can use to show off the game, even if it's just a safety valve for emergencies, might not be a bad idea, but they don't seem to have the ability to actually come up with it or implement such a thing, which is not a great sign for the health of the game. I would kind of disagree with that, saying that, well, Modern was insanely popular. Going back to what Mark Rosewater says, that we focused on Modern for a while and to get awareness for the format to help build it growing, but it's done. It's done. It's done that. It's no longer a young, struggling format. It's a mature format with many fans and a lot of play. It's going to be just fine without a major spotlight. Well, we'll see. We'll see, Mark. We'll see if you're right on. Why would you want to kill something that is just incredibly popular? It'd almost be like football saying, like, oh, well, the Super Bowl's been wildly successful. There's no reason why we need to promote it anymore. I don't know. Maybe that's a terrible analogy, but to me, that's just the 2 Super Bowls of Magic the Gathering were the 2 Modern Masters, Modern Masters Grand Prix. And now they're like, well, we don't need it anymore. Wow, Wizards. Wow. Just the vision, the lack of, is incredibly concerning. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comment section how you feel about it. Am I just continue to beat the dead horse, beat the dead horse, beat the dead horse? Probably. I just had to get this out there. Every time one of these comes up, it just like gets me going. It just, why? Why are you so stupid? Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching.